Welcome back in Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. A union representing dock workers has signaled that 45,000 of its members will walk off the job at midnight Eastern Time. This would kick off a strike that's likely to shut down ports across the East and Gulf coasts. If it drags on for an extended period of time, the stoppage threatens to snarl the nation's supply chain, potentially leading to higher prices and delays in goods reaching households and businesses. This is a big deal. Standing by to talk about it is Joe Camberato. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. Joe, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Austin.
So, let's get straight into this. There's a lot to cover here. This is a complicated issue. The union at the focus of all of this is the International Longshoremen's Association. I'll call it the ILA. How big of a deal is the ILA? How much port traffic do their members handle?
This is a huge deal. You're talking about all of the ports in the United States of America, from Maine to Austin, which handle roughly half of all the goods that come into this country on a daily basis. I mean, this could literally cost $5 billion per day if this strike actually happens.
And how does that manifest itself? Who's going to be bearing the brunt of that cost?
I think you have two major groups of people that are going to have issues. You have everyday consumers that are already stretched thin. They've already been overpaying for everyday goods, and inflation has really been hurting them. And at the same time, you have small business owners who cannot handle another supply chain disruption. Coming out of COVID, they dealt with a roller coaster ride of issues. They're finally getting back on track. And if you kick up these supply chain issues again, I think you're going to have some real big issues with small businesses, especially the transportation industry. At National Business Capital, that's been one of the hardest industries for us to finance, or transportation and trucking, because they dealt with pep-up demand during COVID. A lot of them went out and over-leveraged themselves. They took on more trucks, did a bunch of hiring, and then they didn't make cuts fast enough when that demand slowed. And they finally have just been getting back on track. And I think if they deal with supply chain disruption, they can't make deliveries, they had that loss of work. It really could be the nail in the coffin for many transportation businesses out there that have really been getting beat up over the last 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, I'm just reading here. And, I just wanted to say, I read that this could impact 36 ports, handling roughly half of the goods that are shipped into and out of the United States. It could shutter so many of those operations. What type of products come through these ports, Joe? I read somewhere as well that this could impact, for example, 75% of the nation's supply of bananas. What other goods could we be talking about?
You're talking about groceries, you're talking about electronics, you're talking about parts, for the automotive industry. I mean, it's really every type of, product that businesses need to purchase to finish and complete their jobs, and all the major industries. I mean, we're heading into a holiday season for a lot of businesses. This is where they make a bulk of their money. So if they can't access their products, they can have a huge miss and just wipe out all of their profits by not getting, all these everyday goods that they're selling to consumers. And on top of that, for consumers, if this happens and kickbacks up, I mean, you're wiping away all the work that the Fed has done to get inflation under 3%. And you can see these everyday products that it's probably going to wind up underneath every Christmas tree in America. All those products will probably be overpriced. And again, just going back to what I said earlier, consumers are really stretched thin. They've been overpaying on groceries. They've been overpaying on everyday products, and services. And on top of that, they've been overpaying on interest rates on car loans and credit cards and mortgages. So, across the board, you have people that are, finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, consumers and businesses, and this can completely reverse everything. It's really scary. And it's really unbelievable that the current administration has not stepped in here hard enough and has gotten, to a deal already at this point. We're waiting now to midnight to find out if the strike is really going to happen. I mean, this is a big deal. And I feel like a deal should have been made. You're talking about, half of the country's ports that handle all major goods. I mean, this is serious.
If the clock strikes midnight, how long does it take before consumers start feeling effects from this?
I mean, if this goes on for a few days, I think it's manageable. If this starts to go on, a week plus and weeks, the impacts I think will be, very quickly, and everyone will definitely feel it as we wrap up, this year. I hope that doesn't happen. If this becomes weeks, it's going to be a very big problem.
What if this strike lasts for an extended period of time, like you said? We're talking about. Let's actually come at it from this angle. Let's say this lasts for 24 hours versus this lasts for 3 weeks. What kind of impacts are we talking about in both of those scenarios?
24 hours, I think you're going to have certain businesses that are going to have issues because they're expecting shipments to come, and a lot of those shipments are always delayed, anyways. So 24 hours, you'll have people that are trying to hit deadlines that will probably miss those deadlines. It'll also probably create major traffic. So 24 hours is not just 24 hours. You have all these ships that literally could be sitting around. So just that bottleneck could be a very big disruption. If it goes on weeks, you have basically a COVID flashback, but probably much worse because you still had ships coming in drips and drabs. You didn't have like half of the country's ports being closed. That's a problem.
Could the other half of the country's ports that are still open help mitigate some of the issues here?
I mean, potentially. I mean, thank God, that those are open. There's, been some rumblings and rumors that, they can go on strike as well. But the problem is you have things coming from different parts of the world. So it's not just as easy to redirect a boat to go all the way back around, essentially, the North and South America, to get over to the West Coast. That's not easy. And for, if companies have to do that, the pricing of their, cost to ship is going to go through the roof, probably double or triple. And then, that all those, increased costs would go right back to the consumer, and there you have it with inflation again, rapidly kicking back up.
Yeah, why aren't we talking about West Coast ports tonight? Are they members of a different union?
I'm not exactly clear on that, but there's been some rumblings that I was reading about that there's a potential strike that could be looming there as well, and who knows? They see what's happening on the East Coast. And do the folks on the West Coast start to follow suit?
I'm curious, the sticking points of the negotiations that are going on right now, and I don't know how in the loop you are on sort of these hour-by-hour updates that are going on, but from what we can tell, what exactly are the sticking points, and why hasn't an agreement happened yet?
They really haven't been super clear on the sticking points. I think it's all just coming down to dollars and what dock workers are being paid. So I just think they need to get to they need to find some sort of common ground here, and put an end to this.
It was just 3 or 4 years ago, as you mentioned, that the nation's supply chains were in focus because of the pandemic. You've sort of already answered this question, but could the potential impacts of this strike feel similar to what we saw during COVID?
It would absolutely feel similar. It would be a COVID flashback. And again, what I'm concerned about is there was a lot of work that's happened over the last 12 to 18 months with the Fed increasing rates, and we've all had to bear the brunt of those rate increases, businesses and consumers. So we've had to deal with this, for the last 12 and 24 months to get things back to some level of normalcy, and we literally just got there. So if this happens for an extended period of time, you're going to see, these products and groceries, really everything besides, gas and oil, reverse. And prices increase.
And you remember a strike like this happening before?
I never remember a strike like this happening at all. I mean, half of the U.S. ports. This is just it's really unimaginable. And I cannot believe that we're here, and that between the current administration, the international, the LIA, the ILA, and the U.S. Maritime Alliance that they cannot figure out and come to an agreement on something that's fair and works for everybody.
Joe, we'll leave it there for now. We appreciate your time tonight. Take care.
You got it. Thanks, Austin. Be well.